Hungry Paul continued on his rounds, his bag getting lighter and lighter, doing a job that had existed, largely unchanged, for hundreds of years. To any busy person burdened with all of life's responsibilities and preoccupations, Hungry Paul's lot would seem a bearable one. He didn't have to decide which of a patient's limbs to amputate first, or where to invest life savings of a company's pensioners. There was no pressure to report fourth quarter losses to the higher ups in HQ or force feed carrots to a fevered toddler. His job, on the few days that he did it, involved no agonising decisions or regrets that might spoil the conversation over dinner. And yet, in modern vernacular, postal work is a profession that has become synonymous with violent meltdowns. Why would this happen in such an apparently placid line of work, which involves chatting happily to the householders and performing a task that has throughout history been shown to be helpful in all ways? Most overworked middle managers would gladly swap their late evening conference calls with the West Coast for the simplicity of the postal worker walking in the mixed March sunshine alone with his thoughts. However, such white-collar fantasies fail to consider what is that bends even the most pacific minds towards self-destruction. Though we may be a species that prizes great minds, we are also terrified of and by our thoughts. In prisons, the most extreme and austere punishment that is meted out to errant prisoners, those whose behaviour exceeds even the diabolical standards of incarcerated society, is solitary confinement. The awful fate of being imprisoned with only one's thoughts for companies, with no distractions. One thought billiards another, and an endless internal monologue drowns out the rest of life, bringing dissonance, the silence, restlessness, the stillness, and anxiety to forethought. A certain type of person, isolated and unsuited to long daily periods of reflection, will eventually think themselves to madness. But Hungry Paul seemed to be able to maintain his peace, where another man might have declared war on themselves and those around him. What did he think about? The answer is, quite simply, nothing. Hungry Paul had been blessed with a mental stillness, which had become his natural state over the years. His mind worked perfectly fine, and he had all the faculties of a healthy, if slightly unorthodox man of his age. He just had no interest in or capacity for mental chatter. He had no internal narrator. When he saw a dog, he just saw a dog, without his mind adding that it should be on a lead or its tongue was hanging out like a rasher. When he heard an ambulance siren, he just heard an ambulance siren without noting its Doppler effect or wondering if it was a real emergency or just a driver running late for dinner. And it is in this way that Hungry Paul maintained a natural clarity throughout his day and stayed apart from the trouble that the world will undoubtedly make for those who look for it. At around midday, he finished his deliveries and dropped his bag back to the depot. There was one last letter to deal with before his day was finished. He took his competition entry out of his breast pocket and posted it in a box outside the sorting office, affixing a patchwork of smaller stamps that he had saved up in the back of his wallet. This was all done without any sense of excitement or concern about the competition. His entry was merely an offering. He didn't so much want to win as help. If some other phrase was selected, then that was fine too. The house was empty when he got home. Peter and Helen had left a note on the fridge saying that they had gone off to buy a Buddha at the garden centre. Hungry Paul made himself a peanut butter sandwich, and having failed to find any treats in the cupboard, ate it alone in the kitchen on the seat where he'd watched the birds only a few hours before, the feeders already empty again. He decided to lie down on the couch and took off his shoes the lazy way, with the toe of one foot prizing off the heel of the other, the laces still done up. His feet tingled now that the weight had been lifted from them after a long morning of walking. He dozed off, not minding that he would later wake with that drugged feeling that comes with a second sleep. All around him, the house stood in a state of empty, quiet equilibrium.